No, you're go, go, go. Okay, we can cut it out. We can cut it out. Don't worry about it.
Back. Hold up.
Yeah, we'll cut. Woo. Because even if we don't have like a...
Just laughing because I forgot. Like, that just reminded me of... It's just always so funny. So the first time that I taught to some of the Irish guys and some of the younger Irish guys too was when Worlds was here. Not in 2018, but I think it was like 2014 or 15 or something like that. And if you look on my Facebook page too, there's a memory since my old man passed that popped up where the show court, where they had like, it was like a quarters match or something. It was like Sean Lenning and like, at that time, it might have been like Emmett Peugeot or something like that, had just finished, right? And one of the old guy doubles thing was walking on. So like the WPH recording is live, the USHA, like all that stuff is all live or whatever. And in walks my old man, and the first shot he hits a practice shot and he skips it off the floor, and I'm like, well, there's a good showing, Dad. So, but at that tournament, I remember, I'm not wearing that shirt right now, but I have a. Over in Ireland, there's one of the big sports is Irish hurling, right? And like, if you've never looked into hurling, you got to look into it. It's incredible. But like, they have their own jerseys and everything in clubs. And once upon a time, I was able to get a hold of one of the Kerry County hurling jerseys. And so just to kind of turn some heads or whatever, that day at the tournament, and I'm like fresh out of college. I barely started to play handball at this point, but I wore it. And sure enough, a couple of the Irish, like younger guys, they started like giving me a side eye. And finally, one of them walks out to me, and I've never talked to an Irish guy live at this point before, ever. So, like, the accent is something else in and of itself.
Yeah.
And he walks up, he sort of says to me, he goes, "Nice jersey. Where'd you see that from, eh?" And so I start talking with him.
Nice jersey.
So it turns out it was Martin Mulcairn's, right? He was the one who walked up to me and said that. And if Martin ends up seeing this, he's not going to remember this. But that was the first time I ever met Martin. And then he, like, introduced me to who turned out to be Killian Carroll and a bunch of these other guys who were there for the World. So that was like my first interaction with some of the Irish kids. And it's funny thinking back on that because in the state tournament for singles, literally just a couple months ago here in Minnesota, it was our first organized tournament since before the pandemic. And so we weren't sure how we were going to do with registrants and stuff. And like, I had just started helping with the MSHA board and thankfully the Mankato State Handball program, which is like one of the more predominant collegiate programs for handball. They always help us out by getting a lot of their kids up to it whenever they can. Mike Wells is the name of the coach there, and he's done an incredible job with that program. But he's got two young Irish kids there now. Sure enough, in like the second round, I had to play one of them, and I just got rickrolled around the court. Like, and he knew it too. He was messing around. He was trying to kill left-handed shots from the back corner. He was hitting behind the back shots, and he wasn't cocky, but I mean, he knew like he was gonna, if he played his best, he was gonna beat me zeros. So that was fun, just getting to know. I think his first name is Shane. That was the kid that I played.
How long ago was this? You said 10 years ago?
No. This match just was in like 3 months ago, at the end of November for state singles in Minnesota. Wow. And those two young Irish kids, I think, ended up winning the Bear Bash or whatever that big, huge Missouri State tournament was like a month or two ago it was. They ran through everybody. So
when you say young, like what age are you talking about?
The one kid is a freshman, so he's like 18. The other kid is a first-year grad student at Minnesota State, so he's like 22, 23. But he's got all his eligibility and everything, so he'll be there for a number of years, as long as he's going to grad school.
Damn, hella young.
But
anyway. I miss playing handball that age.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Nothing hurts afterwards.
Nothing hurts. You play as long as you want all day, lights on.
Yeah. Yep. But anyway, now I didn't remember what it is that you asked me, man, but that sparked that whole memory. Just talking to those Irish kids is so much fun. And I hope that so many of them end up coming back, like for the big Worlds or for the big Nationals we're going to have here again in Minnesota on Memorial Day weekend this year at the University of Minnesota. We're going to host that extra bracket for one wall big ball at our Cleland Park courts, and they're going to extend the invite far and wide. Like, I hope we get people from Canada, Australia, Ireland, like everywhere. We want them all to come, and we want to make the bracket like really sort of intimate, right? We're not just going to have like 100 people all jump in. It's going to be pretty limited.
Yeah, we're definitely going to share this part of that recording as a handball short, so people can share it out.
Absolutely.
Let me try and shoot a random intro that I can clip and put to the beginning.
Go for it.
Let's see. How am I going to start this? This is always the weird part, introducing yourself to the camera. All right. What's up, guys? It's your boy Gotsch. I'm here with my boy Quinn, all the way out in Minnesota. And today we're shooting our very first episode of... And then here we go. Just Spike It Radio. Yeah?
I like it.
You like it?
Yeah, run it again, and then ask me a question.
Run it again, right? What's up, guys? It's your boy Gotsch. I'm here with my boy Quinn, all the way out from Minnesota. And we're here with our very first episode of Just Spike It Radio. So I'm going to kick it off to Quinn very quick. For those of you who are watching that don't know who you are, would you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Quinn Foley, I'm located here in Woodbury, Minnesota, which is just a suburb of the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Been a part of the handball scene since like 2012, 2013. I was a college athlete for a different sport, and my old man taught my older brothers and I sort of how to play, and I didn't really pick it up until a later age. So all it took was graduating from college and sort of being burned out of my other sport, and I started getting involved with the community here in the Twin Cities, and I was hooked. Like, kind of the rest is rock and roll history. I mean, I can't go more than like 2 to 3 weeks without playing, otherwise I'm like not right in the head.
So you said you got involved because your family played, your brothers played, and you watched them play.
Yeah.
Oh my God! See, I'm bad at this.
That's
this
all right.
Where the practice comes in.
Just roll a question.
Yeah, right. So you said you just graduated college, and that's when you started playing handball yourself, right? So explain to us who was your dad in the handball community exactly?
Yeah. So as with most cities across the United States, the handball communities are pretty tightly knit, right? I mean, like most everybody knows everybody, especially in the 4-wall communities. The big ball, 3-wall, 1-wall communities are a little bit different, just because, especially in the higher concentrated areas of like New York, for example, or like some of the Southern Cal 3-wall communities, it's a lot of players. Like, it's a lot of players. But in some of the, not so prominent cities, like in Minnesota, for the 4-wall community, pretty much if you're a handball player, all the handball players here. So, my old man got started playing handball back when he was, I don't even know. I think I'm the youngest of 4 boys, and my oldest brother was probably still in diapers, and he was messing around in a court with a couple of racquetball players. And just like a lot of us first found the sport, some handball salt knocked on the door and pulled him off and said, "What are you doing messing around with that sport?" or whatever, and handed him a handball. So he didn't know what it was. And, that was just kind of turned into his crowd and his community. So even through being a doctor, raising 4 boys and everything like that, he was always a part of just the face in the crowd in the handball community. Never really, traveled, do a whole ton of tournaments week in and weekend out and everything like that. I mean, he was focused on his home and his business and everything, but definitely,
when he was a community man. He was a community guy.
Absolutely.
He was a local
when he
guy.
passed this last October, let's see, it was 2 Octobers ago now. It was a pretty big ripple effect. Like, everybody came out to that funeral. There was a lot of handball players there who I hadn't seen in a long, long time. So
wow.
he definitely had an impact.
I can imagine. So would you say when your father passed away, do you feel like you wanted to play or be involved with handball even more so?
To some extent. When he was still alive, I had already sort of started being like more intimately involved with sort of the management of handball in general. So I think I'm in year 2 right now, or maybe it's year 3, I can't even remember, of my first term serving on the United States Handball Association board. And I remember I had a conversation with him before I even ran, just saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. And it made him very happy, of course, that I wanted to do it. I remember he sort of nodded and smiled because I hadn't had any of family of my own yet. And he said, do it now was his advice.
Yeah.
He said, because life's only going to get more busy and complicated from here on in. So I was happy that I was able to get nominated for it and elected to the board while he was still around. And he enjoyed hearing some of the debriefings that I'd have for him about the direction the sport was headed and stuff like that. So it was a good discussion topic for sure.
So I know a lot of people are definitely interested in what goes on in the United States Handball Association. So I have a question for you, right? So you guys have a meeting once a year, right? To go over like everything and all that. Were you a part of the meeting last year?
Yeah, so there's two annual meetings that take place every year. There's the winter board meetings and the summer board meetings. And obviously with COVID, things have shuffled time-wise a little bit, but traditionally the summer board meetings take place at the Toledo National Three-Wall Tournament in Maumee, Ohio. And the winter board meetings take place around about January, usually down in Tucson, Arizona, where the United States Handball Association headquarters are. So essentially, it's it's a full day, right? I mean, we go through everything from budgets to talking about events and planning, pushing dates out for the following calendar year on when we're going to do nationals, where nationals are going to be. One of the biggest challenges that we have, honestly, is to host a huge national or world's event is becoming more and more stringent on the locations we can use for that year over year, just because there's just not that many of them left. For example, the Los Caballeros club in California has new ownership now, and I don't think they're continuing the plans to keep their courts, unfortunately. So that's just yet one more national location where it's tough. And I know the racquetball community is feeling this too. Like the U.S. Open was just held here last October in the Twin Cities at the University of Minnesota. And both for handball nationals and for the U.S. Open of racquetball, we can pretty much take it to the bank that in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to almost be every other year, every 3 years or so that it's going to be here, just because it's tough to find more locations that can hold an event like that with that many courts.
Right, and obviously for those of you who are listening, we're talking about four-wall in this instance, right?
Everything, honestly. I mean, obviously the most prevalent location is and will continue to be, New York for the one-wall events, just because
right.
there's no other place in the entire country, and frankly, I don't think in the entire world that has as many one-wall courts as New York. So that probably won't change. But the dates do matter. I mean, like it's always a jockeying thing, what local events are happening annually around that time. We want to make sure we have as much attention as we can from the local community and support and things like that without stepping on other long-standing local tournaments and stuff.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, none of this stuff is easy at the end of the day. Like, it all requires a lot of work. So I want to ask, like, that meeting that took place last year when you guys sat around, what are some of the ideas that you put forward to just bring up for everyone to discuss? You mind sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a fan of keeping things as simple as I can, because if I sat down for half an hour and just with a blank Word document and started writing down ideas I have for the sport of handball, in 20 minutes I'd have a document 5 pages long, right? So I mean, we all have there's a reason why handball players are so capable of continuing to keep this sport going with such a smaller community of people, and it is because every handball player is automatically, by and large, an ambassador for the sport. Like, we're all that passionate about the sport. So with that said, I like to keep things simple. My two main things, for example, it's January 9th. We're going to have our winter board meeting here in a couple weekends, and I'll report on progress that I have, or rather haven't made, with one of my initiatives last year, and that was to approach the Penn Racket Sports Company, because anybody who's anybody in the big ball handball world, right, with a racquetball versus the smaller small ball for handball and four wall, or the one wall matches, either way. But the Penn is the manufacturer of the big blue ball, right, and that's the ball that everybody out in New York, mostly across the country, all prefer. And one of my initiatives was to just say, hey, have we ever approached them before, right? Of just saying, even if it's not a huge revenue bucket for you guys, like, we're looking to grow. We want to promote you guys the same way as we would hope you'd want to promote us. So it's been a little difficult getting a foot in the door, just because most businesses are pretty hesitant to venture into new partnerships with the pandemic and stuff, but hopefully enough time will have passed in the coming year where they'll be a little bit more open to it, and we'll have a little bit more of a formal approach too, because we had one contact there in sales, and that sort of hasn't really materialized into much. So we're going to kind of start from scratch and just door knock them and say who we are. We're fortunate enough that their headquarters are less than a couple hours away from Tucson, right? So, I mean, we have the ability to just drive up there with a couple of the guys from that office and just say, hey, do you guys want to have a meeting? And we think they'll be receptive to it to some degree.
I mean, I agree. I mean, honestly, it's all about making an effort. If you make the effort, people notice it. And even if things don't go the way that you planned, at least you kind of made an impression on them, and they might keep an eye out for you at the same time. And, for the most part, even though it's not like a huge revenue bucket, like you said, for the company, it's all about exposure. It's all about getting the players involved with the company in terms of like marketing our players to help promote their product, if that makes sense. I mean, a lot of other companies are promoting racquetball players, and you have Head and you have Echelon. They promote their players. They give their players a brand and face value in terms of all that kind of stuff. So I think Penball would be a great opportunity in general for the USHA to kind of hone down a good contract or a partnership in some way, shape, or form. That's a great idea. What about so I know we talked about social media, and I know since the meeting is a couple weekends away, what are some new ideas that you're going to bring to the table? And also with Matt Kruger involved, I know he's also he's very passionate about the sport, and he wants it to grow too.
Yeah, I'll just say this as a little plug for Matt. I mean, not a single person in the handball community has a single bad thing to say about Matt Kruger. I mean, that dude is really a blessing in terms of being the executive director for the United States Handball Association. So,
yeah,
Matt, if you're listening to this, that's my little plug for you, buddy. Thanks a lot, and keep doing what you're doing. But
love you, Matt.
No, it's a good question. I think that I'll kind of dovetail this into a comment I wanted to make sure to get to today. Just starting with the social media aspect. You know me, Joe. Like, you follow me on social media. I'm not the biggest poster, right? I can probably do more about that kind of a thing, and I want to do more because you have a really, really cool brand that you got going that you're starting and you're really passionate about with Handball House, and I'm fortunate enough to have been invited to participate in that with you and contribute to it, and I have every intention of doing so. But in terms of the greater scheme of things with social media with handball, that's going to be something that I kind of force the issue a little bit with in this next board meeting, is just to say, hey, we need to sort of address a bit of an elephant in the room with it, because there are handball accounts and everything, at least one of which is actually managed by some of the USHA board members and admins and things.
Oh, wow.
But this day and age, companies literally pay full salary positions to do nothing else but manage social media, right? And I think that it's something that we sort of can't ignore. And what I meant by sort of dovetailing this a little bit is, for anybody who's involved in the handball community, who listens to this, now more than ever, especially at a local level, the game needs fresh minds and fresh energy on the organizational committees and stuff like that. Like, for example, in the MSHA world where I live, Minnesota State Handball Association, I've only been involved for, I don't know, under 6 months when our executive chair, Gary Rohr, stepped down and retired. And it's just one of those things where a lot of these guys have been doing this for so long, and the prospect or the idea of, on our local level, having to promote and advertise and fundraise, like I said, not every other year, but it's going to kind of come up on every other year, because we're one of the last national large event venues where we can host a big national event anymore.
Right.
And some of them are a little burned out, right? I mean, they've been doing this for so long, and it's the need not only at the local level, but then, blossoming from there into the national level is greater than it ever has been for some younger players that are passionate about this, that are doing their own personal promotions and social media, postings and stuff like that, and trying to promote their own brands as a player and tracking their tournament statuses and things like that. Those are the kind of people who we need to at least vie for a spot. Like, even I'm sure that some of the existing board members will take this as a knock, like I'm trying to get them out. I'm not. I'm just saying that there needs to be more participation and people wanting to vie for those positions, and because we're always looking for new ideas, and new ideas aren't going to come unless we bring in fresh perspectives and things like that. I guess that's my long and short of it.
I hope everybody digests that information because it's powerful. Social media is such a huge aspect in our lives right now that just not being a part of it, you really lose out on a lot of opportunities. I mean, it's ridiculous. I have a crazy story. A couple of years ago, I got reached out to somebody random on Instagram, and he said, "Hey man, I'm hosting my first ever handball tournament out here in California, and I want you to come." And after going back and forth with him very briefly, I kind of respectfully declined because there was obviously a prior engagement that I had because handball tournaments are it's fruitful in New York. Every weekend you can just join a tournament. So I already had one that I had my eyes on. And I went to a couple buddies of mine and I said, "Hey man, this guy reached out to me. He said this. Yo, check out this message. What do you think?" And one of my buddies, Kai, he was like, "Yo, bro, listen. I mean, what's the harm in saying, yo, I'm down to go because you never know. And if he really is about it, and he sends you the money to get a plane ticket, and he has a place for you to stay, then it's legit because you don't have to join another handball tournament in New York. There's thousands of them. Everybody knows who you are out here already. I mean, what good is it to your brand whether you win or lose out here? It doesn't mean anything. But at least if you travel somewhere." You meet a whole different group of people that play and love the game as much as you do. It's a huge benefit. It's a huge win.
I'd even go so far as to say, Joe, that the more New Yorkers that go out to other parts of the country to play in tournaments,
right?
Sorry, I gotta say it.
Yeah.
It's just another level of play. Like we've seen it here in Minnesota between David Velez coming out here and playing.
Yeah.
Like our top players out here are maybe, and I mean hard maybe, A or open level players out in New York. And so my point in saying that is the more that people see sort of that level and they actually see it in person, it's like going to incentivize them to be like, if I really want to take my talent that I think is something hot here somewhere, go play in a tournament in New York and see how you fare. And like that's how people are going to really see like cross country connections and being able to get to know other communities and everything. And that's the sport really needs that a lot.
They need the connections. They need to know that there's other people out there that are just as passionate as you are, that play the game just as hard, but it's the skill levels are just everyone's good in their own way. It's just a new way of seeing it. And when you see it, you can learn from it in any way, shape, or form. But I want to finish off that story that I started, but when I reached back out to the guy and I said, "Hey, you know what, bro? I'll take you up on your invite. I'm down to go to your tournament." He sent me money for a flight. He picked me up at the airport. He was the most nicest, awesomest guy ever. He really loves the sport, and he's very passionate about it, and I felt that energy from him. He made me feel very comfortable while I was out there. I don't want to say his name just because I know he likes keeping his life kind of low-key and private. But if he listens to this, he knows I'm talking about him. But he really did exactly what he said he was going to do. And, as a New Yorker, you're always very skeptical about anything like that. And on top of that, when it's for handball, you're just, 10 times more skeptical because nobody really gets approached in any way like that in our sport. So to have you approach in that way, and it was my first time, I was kind of really thrown off guard. But my friends helped me keep an open mind to that. So it's just very, very cool. Like,
I can
social
see.
Media
Go ahead.
gave me the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And I can see where for New York players, it's it can really seem like is this really worth my time? Because you guys know full well you live in the handball capital of the world for one wall big ball. Absolutely. Right. No question about it. Don't deny it. Nobody in the country can deny it. But it's like, until you go and start, like if you really want the sport to grow, if you really want to be an ambassador of sport, like that has to be something that you're doing once a year at least if you can, right? I mean, and everybody's got their own stuff going on. There are not very many people out there who have handball as their entire job, right? Like most people are doing a day job, or trying to raise families and stuff like that. So weekends away from the family is tough and everything. I'm one of them, right? Yeah. But it's about taking that passion and doing something with it that you never have done before, something outside your own communities, pushing your own comfort zone, like
Mhm.
going into what's the worst thing that happens? You go out there and the tournament's not the biggest thing like what you thought it was. Well, guess what? That community just got a glimpse of what New York handball really is, and you just tripled the probability that any one of them might come out to New York and try out some of the tournaments around there.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know. That's my take.
It's a good take. I gotta take a look real quick to see the. Nice. That was a good 25-minute run right there. Ooh, let's get a breather. Let's take a breather. Take a few bites, don't rush. Let's recollect our thoughts. I'm thinking of, because there were some things I wanted to talk about. And it's so funny that you always have something you want to say, and then when it comes time around to bring it up, you forget. It's the damnedest thing.
It's all good, man. It's part of what a podcast is for.
I don't know how Joe Rogan does it. I know he does like 10 hours straight sometimes a day. He's got the computer. He's got like all the notes, and he's a beast. That dude's a beast. Let's see. Man. So now that we know you have a big family, you're the youngest of four brothers, right? So are all the Foley brothers still living in the same state? Where's everybody right now?
Matter of fact, no. So, Joe, you've actually met not one but both of the older brothers of mine that also play. There's one who landed in the middle, who's a bit of a self-proclaimed black sheep, and he's actually very good. He's a very good squash player, which is a different sport entirely. But he's not a handball guy. We kind of give him a hard time for it, but it's good brotherly banter. It's all in good love. But
Yeah.
no, the next oldest two from me. I live here in the Twin Cities area. Donovan is the other one who you've met who lives here, and he just had his fifth kid, so he's got a lot of new young handball players coming up through the ranks.
Bro, you guys got some strong ass swimmers.
Big families. Yep, big families. But no, the oldest one, Logan. I actually like talking about a lot when it comes to the handball community. So Logan lives out in the Washington, D.C. area, not far away from Springfield, Virginia. And when Logan moved out there many, many years ago, he's got 3 daughters, one of whom is pretty much going to be a teenager now, which is crazy to think. But there are 4 beautiful, no, maybe there's only 3, beautiful 3-wall courts in a park in Reston, Virginia, where there's a good community of both racquetball and handball players. There's 1-wall courts on the back side of it. It's an awesome structure. They got lights and everything. It's gorgeous.
In Virginia?
Oh yeah, they got a tournament every summer, my man. You got to go.
Yo, guys, clip that part. All right, I didn't even know they had handball tournaments out there. 3-wall and 1-wall. In the same park,
yeah. I don't think they have a bracket for the 1-wall courts out there. It's only 3-wall small ball. But if anybody in the handball community in New York knows anybody in the Columbia area where those 3-wall courts are, where they have a couple, like I think that's where the state 3-wall tournament is and stuff. All those guys all stay connected with the guys in Reston. So they call it the No Frills tournament. I don't remember when it is exactly, but it's once a year out in Reston, Virginia. It's at a park called. I got to look the park up, but my brother's like 25 minutes from there. And so, especially during the pandemic when all the clubs and everything closed down, all that guy did was play small ball 3-wall. Even during the wintertime in Virginia when it's like 30, 40 degrees out, they're getting out there in hats and mittens or not mittens, just double glove in their hands, hitting the small ball.
Gloves, we call them.
Yeah. But Logan got real good. And if you look up the results in his age division in the last 2 years for Toledo, he's won his age bracket twice, and him and another guy by the name of Shane Anderson won the A's in doubles 2 years back. So, I mean, he's a force to be reckoned with. He's a hell of a 4-wall player still. He had a bit of an adjustment the first time he played in our 1-wall tournament out here because he doesn't play any big ball. But he took to it just like anybody does. And that's one thing I'll say, too. There's still a handful of people, more than a handful of people out there in the handball community that have been involved in the 4-wall sport for a long, long time. And if you're listening to this and you are a 4-wall player and you've never taken a bite out of hitting a big ball, either in a 3-wall or a 1-wall court, I'm just going to say it like this. You're just missing out. Like, you can't think of it as any other way than it's just another way to have fun playing handball. It's a different discipline, and your skills sometimes will transfer over, and other times they absolutely will not, as I have found. Mm-hmm. But same goes for any big ball players out there. That's why I always tell people, like, if you're a small ball player in New York and you're not inviting at least one person every single year to that Albany Open or the whatever 4-wall tournaments you guys have out there, whatever small ball tournaments you're having out there, you got to get at least one person to just come to the event, give it a try. The back wall is always a struggle. It comes. Don't worry. You just got to stick with it. It's all about moving your feet. But that's how you get people to cross over. And I can't say this about the Twin Cities area. There is, in my opinion, percentage-wise, there's got to be one of the highest percentages of crossover players in our city than almost anywhere in the country. There's really? So many guys who are in 4-wall nonstop all the way through the decades. As soon as our Cleveland Park courts were finished about 4 summers ago now, so many of those guys have come and crossed over, and they're there every summer on Saturdays playing big ball. And all of the 1-wall players that sort of came organically, who learned the sport elsewhere, and we just never had 1-wall courts. Yeah. During the wintertime, we don't have any indoor 1-wall courts here. So those guys don't have much of a choice if they want to keep playing handball other than to step into the 4-wall court and learn how to hit a small ball. So that is one thing I will say about Minnesota. We have done a very good job, kind of by force, right, without much of a choice, to get our players to kind of cross over from one to the other.
So I wanna ask you this question too. I know I've asked you before, but I want everybody else to hear this answer too. So 4 years ago, those 1-wall courts went up, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk about the process of what it took in order for that to become a reality?
How much more time you got?
Half an hour.
That was a joke. So the city of St. Paul, Minneapolis are regretfully not among the easiest to navigate when it comes to, city council approvals and parks and rec and things like that.
Right.
I would venture to guess that the first efforts to have those courts built, 4 years ago, so I think they went up the summer of 2018, I think was the first summer that they were up. Those 2 courts, and again, it's one single wall, 1 court on either side. Like, we're not talking like a bank of courts like you see in New York, right? It's literally a wall. So there's no lines. If you hit it out, it means you missed the wall. So it's exact dimensions and everything. That structure probably had the first efforts to start even the beginning process of board approvals and next levels and budget conversations and everything. That probably started in 2008, 2009.
Wow.
So that's how long it took for some place like in the city of St. Paul.
Dang. And
thankfully, hopefully, the first one is the hardest. And every single summer after our big 1-wall tournament that we hold, we always take a bunch of pictures and video and send it in to the city just to show them, like, hey, this isn't going anywhere. Our event's growing every single year. And by the way, we can't hold a bigger tournament until, like, you give us more courts to work with and everything. So there's not much of a rain out contingency, right? I mean, Joe, you were there this last year. I mean, what do? We basically are picking up tents and holding them over the courts in order to keep them dry. So we're working on that, and we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. But
that was funny that day. That was funny. I never witnessed anybody having the tools that you guys had.
Yeah, so if you ever talk to anybody out in the Reston area, they're well versed in the method of drying course with taking a big, huge tank of propane and a torch and flame throwing them dry. Like, it works.
Yeah, it was a sight to see. Oh man.
But it's tough, man. I think, like I said before, just getting back to sort of the fresh energy perspective, I just think that there's such a need for some of these young, like, I can name drop some of them, man. Like, you're one of them. Your other buddy who's running that page called Handball or whatever that one's called.
Right.
Dylan out in California with Battle Ball. Like, there's these guys who are clearly super, super passionate about the sport of handball, and they're posting on it on social media almost every single day and everything. Just because they're the only ones that you see, there are others that are like them who just aren't as loud about it on social media, right? Those are the kinds of guys who we need to start asking the existing sort of guard and handball boards and everything, hey, what does it take for me to run and sort of be a voice of what happens next in our sport at a local level? And like when that kind of stuff starts happening, then you have fresh energy to go out and start finding new sponsors for handball. Like that's how, oh, I have a buddy who owns a blah, blah, blah company and he doesn't know what handball is, but they're always looking to sponsor something for tax write-off reasons. Like let's approach him, stuff like that. And again, I don't want to throw the existing folks under the bus because they've worked so hard over so many years to get to the sport to where it is today. Yeah. But sadly, a lot of them are at a stage of life where they've done it for so long, they're kind of ready, right? Like if some young buck knocked on the door and said, hey, I'd like to take your torch, it's not that they're looking to just quit, but they'd be more than happy to be like, yes, here you go. Like the time is now. I've run the race. I've fought the good fight. Like it's time for me to let some other young kids come in and take it over. So that's my call to action. If you are passionate about this sport, I don't care what discipline it's in, big ball, small ball, 1 wall, 3 wall, 4 wall, and you really want to start making a difference, some of you guys might not even know who the people are who run your local boards and leagues and stuff like that. And that's got to change. You got to get to know them. Like, and by the way, don't be disrespectful, right? I mean, these guys have done what they've done for a long time. And maybe in recent years, there hasn't been a whole ton of extra growth and exponential change and everything to show for it. But
don't go out of your way to find out who they are just to complain to them.
Exactly right.
Just find out how you
get to know them. Get to know them. Ask them out for a coffee. Ask them out to the pub for a beer. Talk to them. Understand the history of why things have been done, the way they've been done over the course of years and everything. Ask them questions. If you get them to go, gee, I never thought about it that way before, guess what? You just served your purpose right there. So I try to do the same thing with the USHA. Like I have to bring so much respect to these guys, like the Matt Krugers, the Tom Soves, the Rob Burrells, the Steve Burrells. These guys have been doing this for so long. Leanne Martin, got all the respect in the world for her. And until people take the time to truly understand the history and the genesis of the organization, how it came to be, who the who's who was before we were even on the earth, right? And understand all of that history and stories, which you're not going to get by looking in a textbook somewhere. Like you have to talk to these people and get to know them in order for that to happen. Then and only then can you start to make a case and say, okay, now that I understand a lot of this stuff, like without recreating the wheel and without, tossing everything out the window and starting from scratch, here's some things that we can do. Like here's what I see at my level as a young person who's grown up in the social media era. Here are some easy, quick win, low-hanging fruit pieces that we can start doing literally today, and it'll have an immediate impact. Like that is the kind of thing that people need to start doing. That's the approach that they need to take.
Bingo. Be more vocal. Don't be shy. I know a lot of people feel like they're not good enough to share their material, but you got to understand, nobody's the best at anything. There's always somebody out there that's better than you in some way, shape, or form. Like you can't think about it like that. Everyone's going at their own pace, and it benefits everybody as a whole. It just does. I think a good idea for USHA is to really start a media agency that is geared towards managing social media profiles and hire the people that know how to run it assertively and effectively with a generous enough budget to actually get everyone's feet wet in a way. So there was something I shared earlier this morning to the Handball House group, and it reigns true today because I've done it years ago to get other sponsors. There's a lot of big companies, believe it or not, that don't even partake in social media, or they just started getting involved in social media. A lot of these pages aren't that big. So for those of you that are listening, imagine this, right? Imagine we made a group of 200 handball players that, post, not every day, but they post often enough. You get that big group, and every time somebody posts, everybody engages, likes, and comments on that post. What that will do is it'll drive the market of Instagram grading your profiles, letting it be seen by people who don't even know that your account even exists.
As suggested content, right?
Yes, just content. And on top of that, imagine all 200 or 300 of you, whatever, how many people are in that group, if you guys are all focused and you guys want to target one sponsor, For example, Rockin' Protein is one of the sponsors that they just sponsored pickleball. They sponsored a couple pickleball teams. They have nice advertisement boards on some of the courts in different states that I've seen. They have less than 10,000 followers on Instagram. They don't get any likes, and they don't really get any comments. So my idea to other people, when they see a brand that they like or that they want to work with, and you feel you have a good chance based on what you see on their social media presence, if all of you guys come together and you boost that profile's engagement up and you comment and you really you share their posts on stories and you actually like their product too, don't just do it just to do it. If you like their product and you like their mission and what they stand for, because they'll know if you're bullshitting them, excuse my language, but it's true. But the point is, they're going to realize, wow, we have a large market of handball players that really enjoy our market, really enjoy our product, excuse me. They really enjoy our product. And they're going to obviously take initiative and reach out to some of the handball players, or in this case, if there was a social media agency, a media agency under USHA, they would handle all incoming brand applications in that sense, because the large market of their social media presence comes from a couple hundred handball players that are all orchestrating and working together to manipulate and get people to see who we are. That's how you dominate space on the internet. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it just all starts with the approach. And like I said, I plan to bring this up, without being too abrasive about it, of course, to the USHA. It's just like, guys, this is, for better or for worse, whether you like it or not, this is something that we have to start spending more time on, because social media ain't going anywhere. I mean, there's companies that have literally started with nothing but a social media page and have grown. Like, I can name one example off the top of my head is a soap company called Sasquatch. Everybody has seen their stuff online. That company literally started out of a garage with an Instagram page. That's it. And everybody on a national level and somewhat of, I don't even know, maybe at a global level knows who they are. So I like that you mentioned pickleball. You and I have talked a lot just privately about pickleball and everything like that. You got people who are the farthest thing from having anything to do with a racket sport or a court sport or anything like that have all the money in the world and are sponsoring things having to do with pickleball. That doesn't just come out of nowhere. They see that there's value in it. They see that they all want to be a part of something that's happening, that's cool, that's trending, and everything. And I just think it all starts with a question, and that's going to be my question. It's like, hey guys, we can't ignore this, right? I mean, there's definitely more that we can be doing. And by the way, it can't just be one of us on the USHA board just hanging out for an hour or two doing a post every day. Like kind of to your point, there are literally full agencies on a contract basis that do this for full organizations, and the return on the investment isn't zero, right? I mean, you're not just doing it just to do it. They do it because they see over the course of time, their revenue starts to go up because they become more relevant, because more people know who they are. And that's the whole idea. Is still to this day, it bothers me, and I know it bothers you when you mention the term handball to somebody. What's the first words out of their mouth? Oh, you mean like team handball? No, totally different sport, totally different culture, totally different group of people. And it's just something that, it's been that way for a long time. It's been that way since I was a little kid. My father would be talking to people about handball, and the liquor store clerk would be like, oh, you got to try this game. And you try to tell them about it, and just they seem interested. They're like, wow, I've never heard of that before. It's like, I know you've never heard of it before. Welcome to the rest of the world, man. I mean, it's kind of an aspect that is part of kind of what makes it cool a little bit, because it's such an underground type thing. It's such a word of mouth community, and that's part of what makes it such a brotherhood and sisterhood too, which I think there's something to be said for that. Right. But yeah, it's something that you and I are dead set on the same page about this, and I intend to bring it up. One thing, you asked me for a couple of things about that I plan to say to the USHA. That's definitely one of them. The other thing that we can't ignore, again, I start with things that you guys, if we can all agree that this is a thing, that this is happening, then we all can agree that we can't just ignore it. We have to do something about it, put some action into it, put an activity behind it, market it, whatever you want to call it, is here in Minnesota, I can think of two top level players for sure, four players right off the top of my head without thinking for 10 seconds who learned how to play one ball handball while serving time. And the USHA has never done any kind of a partnership with a correctional facility or whatever. And that's going to be something that I put on the initiative page for 2023 and into 2024. It's one time a year. We got to get 2 to 3 people out to a prison system where we'll do our research, obviously, where we know there's courts and where there's people playing and like the inmates know what it is and everything. But we'll bring a table out. We'll bring rule books and everything like that, engage with them, talk to them about how they can stay connected with the sport when their time has been done, right? And there are people who we can put on camera who have become very near and dear to the sport. The co-director of the Minnesota Summer One Wall Tournament, Dave, with me, is an example of this. He's a byproduct of it. He will go on camera at a global level if he has to say, part of what has kept me out of trouble since I've been done serving my time, no question, without a doubt, don't deny it, is handball. Without handball, I don't know where I would be. And that is something that's powerful, and it's something that people who have nothing to do with handball will be impacted by, and they'll identify with it, and they'll want to understand the story behind it. So that's my next big thing for the USHA, is to say, let's pick out a handful of 10, do an outreach, see who responds, right? Because, I mean, we'll start at the local level. All you can do is just make a couple of phone calls and everything. But once you get one that you know has courts, some of these places, I didn't know this. I found this out within the last 2 months. In Duluth, Minnesota, there is a sort of a higher tier, like they call them like the difference between the blue collar, white collar correctional facilities. One of the white collar facilities in Duluth, Minnesota, has outdoor long wall, 3-wall courts that nobody knows exist. And that's going to be the first place that I start, is to say, like, hey, are these even in use? Like, are people just kicking soccer balls, or are there actual handball players? If there are handball players playing on them, that's going to be target number one. Summertime 2023 or 2024, USHA wants to partner with you guys. You can use us as a springboard too, like talk about what you've done to your facility, talk about the local investment that you still need from the city of Duluth, right, to continue to make your facility state of the art, and then let us promote handball. Talk about which inmates have come out of this thing that we can maybe even reach out to, and who may not know how to get plugged into the handball pipeline, because like a lot of them point, it's what keeps them out of trouble, and it's what keeps them grounded. So
that's a great idea.
You can see me getting worked up about this because I'm passionate about it. But it's another strategy that's never been done before. And if it's been done before, then it's been way too long.
Or it's been done incorrectly.
That could be, but put it this way, it certainly hasn't been done in the social media age.
No, and that's a huge impact that can make it a lot more simpler for people to want to be able to do something new and different and shake hands with people they've never seen before, because at least you have something to look at before even engaging in the first place. It's not just, a brick wall and somebody on the other side. Like, you get to see first. You get study first, and that part's important.
I could go on about this, man. I mean, like, what is one thing that is a common denominator amongst almost every single person who serves hard time? They all have a desire to be seen. They all have a desire to be known and valued, and probably all have a massive gaping hole in their prior life before they started serving time before that. In the handball community, what is that that's common amongst every single player? You're all seen, you're all valued, you all have a mutual respect for one another because you know and love this sport, and that is part of what keeps these guys grounded. I'm convinced of it. I know it without even knowing it myself from personal experience. Dave says it all the time. He's like, I don't know where I would be without the handball community. They all know something that's near and dear to me. I can identify with it with them on a very deep level. It's kept me in shape. He likes to say it's the closest thing you can come to combat without fighting. It's basically combat with a ball, is what he likes to say, right? But it's a game that 2 10-year-olds can go out and play the same way that 2 grown men can go out and play.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like if that were something that we really addressed and put a full court press on, right, to draw some attention to, especially on social media, it would get so much attention because everybody wants to see that feel-good comeback story about what keeps somebody out of trouble, what's kept somebody on the straight and narrow and everything. And for so many people that people don't realize, that something is handball.
Shout out to you, Dave, also. I don't want to forget, shout out to you, bud. You're doing a lot.
He wants another crack at you, if you didn't already know that.
Yeah, he's always going to want a swing or two. He's going to be waiting a little bit, though, because I'm still healing from that partial tear in my right shoulder.
That's all right.
So.
He's doing a fair amount of travel. You look for his name in What's that event that's happening? It's like in Denmark or Amsterdam or something. Isn't there a big world event that's happening there in the near future? He's going out for it.
I think London's coming up in February.
Okay. Well, I don't know
Yeah,
which month it's in, but he's going to Amsterdam for a big World Handball Council tournament or something. And then
that's sick.
he's going everywhere, man. He's going to go down to Tucson for one of those 3-wall tournaments again. He's going to go down to New Orleans for the pro stop. He's going everywhere. So make sure you be
Good,
looking
man.
for him. We'll be tracking you, Dave.
Yeah, that's right, bro. I'm gonna study you. You're not gonna beat me. I'm sorry.
Oh man.
Oh man, how's I don't know if we could talk about this, but maybe we can. If not, I'll just cut it out. But how's Dave doing with trying to build that handball wall?
Yeah, so I haven't talked to him since he first engaged with that lady. So what Joe's asking about here is there's an individual down at the Target Center in Minneapolis where the Timberwolves play, but below the actual gym space where the Timberwolves play is a Lifetime Fitness, and they have handball courts in there, a big gym. So really, it's like the highest tier of Lifetime membership. And let me just check something 1 second.
You're good.
All right. And Dave was down there either lifting or something, and there's a big, like there isn't every Lifetime Fitness and LA Fitness across the country right now. There's a big pickleball group that meets, and they set up temporary nets in the gym and everything. And he noticed that there was this lady that was walking around, and I don't have her name right now in front of me, but I intend on meeting this lady. She basically wants to be the name and face of Minnesota pickleball. Like she's got ins with the people who run the national organization. She's got a lot of ins with the people who run all the programs down in Florida, where the sport is huge.
Crazy.
But more namely, she has the ear of the guy who owns Lifetime Fitness and
Damn.
the majority owner. And Dave approached her and said, I'll make you a deal if I come and support, your local organizational, pickleball games and everything. Would you help me get connected with him? And she sort of asked, yeah, sure, why and everything. And he hadn't even mentioned handball. He basically said, I'm a local contractor. Dave owns his own construction business, right? And he said, I'm looking to get some jobs, even just some smaller ones with some larger organizations, more commercially. And, I just would be happy to do something. He said, my idea for you is, pickleball, they don't really, employees usually tell pickleball players to try not to practice in the handball courts because they don't want the ball to scuff up the court or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But he said I'd be more than happy to set up some walls, right? Some practice walls for people to practice pickleball in the gym area, and they can be permanent because they won't be a wall in the center of the gym, but it'll be up against the wall, and it doesn't require that much space. Okay, well, one thing led to another, and they started talking. I don't think he's had a meeting yet, but I know he's exchanged emails with the owner of Lifetime, and he's fine with it. He's all about it because if it's got the name pickleball attached to it, that's where their attention is. That's where their investment's going for sure. And what he basically told her after the fact, he said, look, I'll level with you. I'm a handball player, and this wall, as long as you give me the keys to the castle on the dimensions that I make it, and you also get the club to allow me to lay down some lines, whether they're temporary or not. I mean, every gym has lines for volleyball and badminton and everything.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He wants to make a couple of permanent one-wall courts, and that would be basically the state's very first indoor one-wall courts. They wouldn't be public. You'd have to be a Lifetime member, but I mean, it's a start,
That's amazing still. I mean, for it to be in Lifetime for one, underneath the Timberwolves stadium, two, and the fact that it's not just some, GM or whatever, it's the actual one of the largest shareholder owners of the whole gym itself. Like, that's a really big deal.
Yep.
That's a very big deal.
Now, there's probably some more red tape that he hasn't encountered yet, right? It'll take time. It'll take work. It'll take conversations and approvals and budgeting and all that stuff. And I'm not worried about that. Dave's a very, 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 very driven person, as you know.
Yeah,
So
I know.
once he sets his mind to something, he doesn't quit. And I got every confidence that he's going to chase this thing until something materializes from it. But again, I'm just bringing this whole thing full circle once again, man. Dave is yet another younger, driven, passionate handball player who's trying to make moves and make things happen to grow this sport that can and should, and I'm needling him about this right now, be a part of the more local level, right? To be on some of those local board meetings every month or every other month or whatever it happens to be involved in what goes into planning the next state tournament date, what goes into planning the hospitality for the 2023 Nationals in Minnesota, what goes into planning, what we're going to do to try to find new sponsors and everything, because again, these guys have done this for so long, and they've gotten it to a point where it was started from the ground up. It was nothing. And these guys deserve all kinds of credit. And by these guys, I'm talking about the current board members that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it is.
Shout out to you guys.
But they'll agree, right? They'll say, listen, we're not 20, 30 years old anymore, man. Like, we don't have the energy to go door knock people right now. Half of them are trying to enjoy retirement,
Right.
and that's fine. Respect to them. And we don't want to say by any means that they should be disallowed from being involved anymore. But there's something to be said for having some younger people in there who can be at more of a ground level and who want to hustle, who have the ambition and the energy to do it. And I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
That's right. No, I'm soaking it all in because it's amazing how large the gap is between the people who are really like heavily involved at the top on these boards and the new kids who really want to like put their foot in there and do something. It's such a large gap, Do you feel like these guys are worried to really pass a torch like that to someone
I'm not.
who's so young?
I think their biggest fear, Joe, and I alluded to this earlier. This is why I hope so much that anybody who hears this message really takes this next part to heart. It's that they're concerned that the new wave and the new voices of handball will come in with a complete and utter disregard about all of the blood, sweat, and tears that was put into this before their time. And I think that they're very hesitant to sort of release the control on some of the things that have been done a certain way for a long time that were tried and true, right, to their credit, up until this point in time. And that's why I've taken the approach that I have taken it as one of the newest members on the handball board. I do not want to seem like a bull in a china shop coming in here, pointing fingers, saying this needs to change, you're not doing this right and everything. No, I aim first. For my first full year, I asked a lot of questions. The ball, for example, the ball manufacturer for small ball has changed several times over. I wasn't there for any of that history. I don't understand what the disagreements or the changes or what the vehicles were that drove any of that. I wanted stories. Like, I wanted to understand why was this done this way? When did that happen? Who were the people who are either no longer with us or just not involved anymore who drove that? Like, those are the things I think they fear the new age generation of handball players will have zero interest in. And to their credit, they're right. They need to have an interest in it, because unless you can, like, it's like anything. That's why there's history classes in schools, right? I mean, you have to understand what came before your time so that you can understand how not to make the same mistakes that might have already been made,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the hesitation. I could be maybe missing a thing or two or maybe reading too far into it, but there's not a single person on the national board or on any local board, I would venture to guess, who would have a problem with new younger people coming in and wanting to participate in the direction of the sport. Like, they're begging for them. In fact, when it comes to nominations, part of the USHA's rules and bylaws state that if you're going to nominate somebody as a board member, it can't be from within your own region. So I could never nominate someone when my term is up to take over the central region, which I currently preside over. It has to be somebody from a different region, because I totally get it. It takes out all the bias. It takes out any hidden agendas or any of that stuff, right? So that's why it's been tough, and that's why I'm encouraging people, get to know the people on your local boards, because chances are you'll eventually get to somebody who's involved at more of a national level. Even if they're not a sitting board member, they might be a part of a committee like the One Wall Committee or the Promotions Committee or the Funding and Revenue Committee with the USHA, and they'll get you introduced to people, right? And that's how these things happen. Like, there's a couple of players who I'll remain unnamed, who are at the pro level. Like, these guys are young and they're good, and like they're gonna be next in line. Like, they're gonna be nominated once a couple of the other terms are up and everything like that, and they will join the board and they'll be welcomed with open arms. That's my story, and I mean, I hope I've been fair enough for the USHA who listens to this, pending. I mean, I don't want to get myself in any trouble and, throw people under a bus, as it might have seemed that I am, but
Nah, of course not.
I just think that I think the need now is more desperate than it ever has been for a gap to be bridged between the people who are young and passionate about handball and the people who actually hold the reins to what happens with the future of handball.
And we definitely need to figure out a way because, like you said, to everybody's credit that got handball this far, this is why I want to I want to abuse social media so much, and I want to have more talks like this with plenty of other people to be able to tell their story, because you don't want to strip a legacy and change it into something else, because, like one wall handball is taking over the globe right now. And back in the day, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it was four wall. Everybody suit and tie, Fox 5 News, big cameras, all up inside YMCA, interviewing the players inside the box. It's so hard it's so hard knowing that handball was once at that level, at four wall, and then feeling like you're giving all that growth for that part of handball up because the new kids on the block love one wall more and will know how to market one wall better. So, I can kind of see how it's a very delicate, controversial type of thing, but to United States Handball Association's credit, they should be on top of all handball, all multi-walled sports in terms of handball in general. They should delegate. They should be on top, and they should be able to delegate who handles what handball sport. USHA handles the governing rules. They supply referees, as an example. They do the marketing. They have the media agency. Then you have a division for four wall, a division for three wall, a division for one wall. And then this way you can really, in between the lines, demographically, analytically, statistically, figure out, all right, what's going to be our revenue source within handball in general. Because when you look at basketball, when you look up how much each team makes throughout a season based on sponsors and just who they have on their team in general, maybe 6 teams out of the whole NBA league makes the majority of the money for the whole sport in general. So now USHA has to look at this at that same angle. What's going to generate the most income for the sport now? Because nobody's trying to get rid of four wall. We just want one wall to have the shine that it's having at the moment and to be taken advantage of. Just to go back to the point, by trying to get a partnership with Penball, why not have that? It just doesn't make any sense not to, right? So we need to figure out a way to kind of imprint the legacy of the four-wall history that USHA has had put together, highlight the big people who were involved in that, get those documentaries out, then I feel like they would have more feeling of accomplishment and be more than happy to pass the torch down, knowing that putting all that work in, getting the knowledge out there, getting handball seen in that light can also generate a lot of things. I just can't find the right words for it, but
let me tell you something, Joe. There's one thing without which they ain't going to listen to anybody who's younger. And that one thing is people got to start running for board spots. Because otherwise, the USHA is going to look at any voice, whether it's yours or anybody else's, and just go, yeah. Right?
I grow my beard out so I look older?
No. What I'm saying is they're going to look at it and be like, well, hey, listen, buddy, if you want to talk so much about all the changes you think we should be making, step up to the plate. Let's see you run for a spot. Like, that's going to be their attitude, right? And to get back to just some of the comments you made about like comparing it to basketball and things like that, I'm genuinely convinced at this point that some of those questions, even if they were asked at one time during board meetings, it's just been a number of years, right? And sometimes this stuff really does take a lot of time where it's like, truthfully, like transparent, we are still picking up the pieces of figuring out how it is that we get back to ground zero where we were before the pandemic even began. Like there was a whole year in there, year and a half really, of no tournaments, no national events, no recognition, killing all momentum of any that they had. And that's been the majority of our conversations. Like, where do we get back, right?
And there was no social media for any handball, anything either. There was nothing going on. Nobody was watching. Like, it's actually crazy to me. It's actually crazy to me.
And listen, all I can do is just put myself in their shoes, right? Like from a devil's advocate perspective, like if I'm in their shoes and I'm hearing anybody like from the outside like saying stuff like that about the board, immediately their knee-jerk reaction is going to kind of be to get defensive, right? Well, we are doing this or we're doing that and everything like that. To get them to be to get them to be agreeable and like open to comments like this, the first question they're going to ask is, okay, great. Why aren't any of these people running for a board position? Or let me go back to one particular item we haven't covered yet, and then I know we might be a little short on time, but everybody in the small ball world, okay, knows that within the last 3 years or so, 4 years maybe, a new ball has hit the scene. Okay, the ball that's been the ball for many years now is what's called the 21. Okay, it's the standard USHA tournament directed 21 ball. Okay, a new small ball was made by a group of guys in Cincinnati simply because they had some issues with the 21. Admittedly, the 21 does break a lot, right? So they wanted a more reliable ball and one that would last longer pretty much once open. So they developed their own brand. I think they call themselves Ace LLC. I know the guys, like who I've been on the court with them. They're awesome. Ace. They're out of Cincinnati. Yep. And they have a ball called the One Ball. Okay, well, it just so happens that when they released this ball, the one wall small ball community went gaga over it. There's not a single small ball player in all of New York who prefers a 21 to a 1. They all love the brand new ball that was made, but it hasn't caught on very much in the greater four-wall community across the entire country. And so for a lot of board meetings now, the conversation has been, it feels like we're sitting on a fence right now. Players are getting frustrated. Why can't the USA just have one universal ball and everything? It's like, well, originally the perspective from their side of the fence was it's good to give players options. No different than in tennis, you can buy a Penn ball, you can buy a Wilson ball, you can buy all kinds of them, right? Based on your preference. But I think what they hadn't heard, not that they were, too short-sighted to realize, but they hadn't been given the feedback of, which I said on my very first board meeting. I said, you have no idea how much the local level player is becoming further and further frustrated with the USHA as an organization, that there remains two different balls and people are arguing over which ball they want to play with based on preference and based on which next tournament is going to be administered with which next ball. And so I bring all of this to a head because the USHA is not going to make the decision to do away with the 21 and make the one ball the universal ball because the feedback ain't there. So anybody I run into, whether it's in New York or anywhere else, who always loves to gripe about the 21 and talk about how much they love the one ball and how much they wish the tournaments were administered with it, the first thing out of my mouth is every single time is, okay, does the USHA know your opinion? No. Why aren't you emailing them? Why aren't you getting a massive email e-signed by 35 local players and sending it to them saying, hey guys, here are 35 guys locally who all agree our next local tournament, when it's a USHA sanctioned tournament, let's say St. Louis or let's say Kansas City or let's say Toledo, we all agree, we all want the one ball. The USHA will say, great. They've never had that feedback before. So I totally get where they're coming from, that they can't just up on a whim change something and make a decision based on 5% of the voice of the population, So I relate it to that when you talk about making changes or whatever. It's like they need to see the feedback. They need to see people reaching out to them. And I genuinely think that whether it's regards to balls or whether it's regards to anything else, handball players, especially at a local club player level, make the mistake of thinking that their own collective local opinion makes its way to the USHA board, because oftentimes the case is that it does not.
So here's an idea. So with the Handball House app, some of you guys know I made a prototype for it. If we're able to bring the whole demographic of handball players to the app, and we have all the functionalities that'll help bring the sport to the next level, something like that, where we're trying to figure out how we can get feedback and what'll make it easier for people to even want to get feedback. I talk to plenty of people now that don't even like emails. They don't really know how to use emails or Google Drive or any of that stuff for that matter. So what's the easiest way to do it? Because most of these guys, they know how to use Facebook and social media. If you look at pickleball right now, they have their own pickleball app. If you look at all the other sports, they have their own apps too. So if we brought all of our handball players over to the Handball House app, if players log in, simple survey pops up. What ball do you guys prefer? And if they want to continue on the app, they just push one and it goes away. It'll be easier to have certain things in place to be able to get the feedback for people that, nowadays, I think people were conditioned to be more lazy because of social media and, just even doing something as simple as that. I mean, even shooting an email out could be pretty lazy, but even that is considered work to a lot of guys nowadays,
I agree with you 110%. I think the challenge the USHA has had is that no matter how many times they try to push out a survey, the general age and demographic of the handball player across the country is at a place where they're going to need to ask one of their kids or grandchildren to help them download an app on a phone, and they still prefer pens and papers. And so if you require the stats and the feedback to be any number of things, like I think this last round of surveys for the latest rendition of the Wallball, there were two forms of the survey. There was a paper form people could mail in, and there was there was a Google link though too. I think it was like a Google Form survey or something. And
that's my heart.
You know what though? Again, I see where they're coming from, because they're feeling like they're doing whatever they have to do to reach every last handball player they possibly can and cater to the general demographic of a handball player. And I think that the change in perspective needs to come in with what you're introducing and saying, well, like if we did this, it would have a lot. And to take that pushback of, yeah, but we tried that and everything. It's like, yeah, well, people need to own it. People need to all be all in on it and say, hey, listen, if you guys want to make change in handball, you want to make your voice heard, this is the only route you can do it now. And this spills into the membership conversation too, because for the longest time before, like Ben Van Arsdale, who's the head of the technology committee for the USHA now, great guy. He's young. It's based out of Milwaukee. Kyle Kloss is another one. He's out of the Chicago area. Awesome dude, super young. These guys came up to one of their first board meetings that I sat on. We're like, hey guys, first order of business, we're still sending out yellow pieces of mail, snail mail to people to renew their memberships. Do you guys not think that we can develop some sort of way for people to have a credit card registration and have an auto renewal and have them get an email the first of the month saying, hi, USHA member, would you like to renew your blah, blah, blah per year membership starting at the first of next month? If not, please opt out right now. Like that was like to like a lot of the board. And so like that's sadly sort of where things are right now.
But it's just, come on now.
So anyways, but you see my point, right? I mean, there's a bridge, there's a gap that needs to be bridged. And I mean, you don't need to sell it to me, man. I think having an app and sending surveys out on it and having a universal way for handball players to communicate with each other on like their own social media platform or whatever it happens to be, I think is awesome. I think it's sweet.
USHA, if you're listening, let's make this app a reality. Let's make it a reality.
Didn't I hear you say that you were the original developer of the USHA Instagram page anyway?
Yeah, I did. I did make the page for USHA. I made it in Jared Vale's office. I made him put his information in there, his email, his password. He gave me some content of a lot of players, and I pick and chose some of them. And as a proof of concept, I did maybe a week of posting. I posted maybe 3 or 4 photos, did the correct hashtags. Because at the time, keep in mind, this was maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I did this, right? I was pushing social media like crazy to people. And that the algorithm was different. There was no Reels. There was no TikTok. It was still Musical.ly. So it got good engagement. And knowing that USHA has such a great database of historical photos and Hall of Famers and good interviews with just everything is professionally done over the history of USHA. Not like what you can pick up off of YouTube of one-wall players in New York today, which is, a gap that could be filled in order to help USHA's efforts in promoting all the things that USHA is doing. But when I did that, people saw it. I wrote a game plan down, spread it around, and they didn't take it seriously. But a couple of years went by. Obviously, people see how social media helps by watching other people grow on social media. Then they decided to take advantage of it, and I'm happy they are, and I hope they continue to do so, because that's the governing body's page. They should be verified. They should send in the verification paperwork, Because as soon as the social media giant takes a look at the paperwork and sees like, okay, wow, this is the governing body of this sport, verification, automatic boost to the profile, automatically more engagement, automatically seen more. You'll be able to, on the player's behalf, send in paperwork to prove that, yes, they are a professional handball player, and we can vouch for them because we are the governing body. What's going to happen is there's going to be a trickle-down effect where it starts reaching the local players that have a professional social media presence that can apply on their own, and then Instagram would recognize, based on the material that is given to them from the governing body, that, okay, yes, this guy deserves a blue check based on what they've sent in with their credentials, whatever news reports that they've been a part of, or any articles that they had written about them, including USHA articles, which is also a big deal because when USHA writes articles about their players, that is considered news. That is government agency news because it's a governing body. A lot of people don't see it like that, and people watching this and maybe hearing it that may think it's a joke. Well, it's a reality. Look at any other sport that has their own media agencies. They're all verified. All of their publicists are verified. All of their interviewers are verified, and we would be doing the same thing here. And that's my goal with Handball House, to be able to fill those gaps because I have those connections with those social media platforms and the agencies that can kind of cut through red tape and get the job done if need be. But I don't think that route is necessary if USHA is able to collect the proper information to give it to them, making it a lot easier for all the players,
For sure, man.
So I think we're getting to the point where we could probably...
Yeah, we can duck out, man. I think I probably should get back to my day here too, but yeah, I'm glad to spend the time, man. Like as you can see, there's a couple of things in there where once I get going, like,
yeah,
like it just makes you want to shake people,
Oh man, Quinn, I want to thank you for having for coming on the show and taking time out of your busy day. Got kid number 2 around the corner. Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks, my man.
That's amazing. And,
he or she will have a handball in its hand before too long. Don't you worry about that.
That was going to be the last question before we end the show. How old do your kids have to be before they have a handball in their hand?
Well, the current one will be, the current Rugrat Paisley will be 2 on April 5th, and half of her toys that she chases around the house are big ball, small ball handballs. So
I love it.
That's where we're at. That's where we're at.
He's an Aries baby. I love it.
We still got to figure it out though. Half the time she picks it up with this hand, half the time she picks it up with this hand. So maybe she's already got that ambidexterity. Who knows?
Dude, that's where it starts.
Well, thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
Nah, man, I'm happy to have you on. And to everybody watching, thanks for sticking through the first episode of Just Spike It Radio with me and my boy Quinn, sponsored by Handball House. And looking forward to seeing you on again soon, Quinn.
Thanks, my man. I'll be back.
All right. Take care.
Yep.
Peace.
Later, man.
Nice. What a good way to end the episode.
Good stuff, man.
Good shit, bro. Woo! Man, dude, I don't even have a proper chair. I've been sitting on this wooden stool over here. Can you believe this shit? My legs was hanging all weird and everything. Because the last chair I brought was too low. I'm like, damn, well, this thing will even go, further down. I got it at the end of the clip.
You got to get yourself an office chair. So you can, kind of like mine, where, you begin the episode and, Joe turns around like this.
Holy crap.
All right, I got to let you fly, my man. I got a bunch of stuff I got to go put out since we've been on here. So,
sounds good.
I'll be in touch. I'll check out some of the more of the stuff that you sent to, because I frankly haven't. I just had a busy weekend, man. Just give me some more time, and I'll get logged into that app and check it out.
Hey, don't even worry about it, bro. Don't even worry about it. I know we're gonna get around to it. We're gonna get around to it.
All right, man.
I can click the stop recording button.